Welcome back. I'm your host, Dr. Jennifer Thompson, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. This episode is for anyone who has ever been in the situation where you feel like things are going great and you are making progress, and then it feels like everything is falling apart. 2 steps forward and 4 steps back. It can be in business, relationships, your healing journey. Maybe you're someone who has been doing the inner work, healing and therapy and energy work, and lately things feel harder instead of easier. Your old wounds are back, you're exhausted, you're questioning everything. Or maybe you're an entrepreneur or business owner who has been pouring everything into building something. And right now, it feels like nothing is working. The clients aren't coming, the revenue isn't moving. You're starting to wonder if you have made a terrible mistake. Or maybe you're in a financial pattern that you can't break. You make progress and then something happens and you're back to square one. Or you're right on the edge of a new level financially and everything feels so unstable and so scary. Maybe it's a relationship or a creative project or a health journey or a life transition that felt right when you started and now it feels like it's unraveling. Whoever you are, wherever you are, this episode is for you, because what I want to talk about today is a phenomenon that shows up in every area of life when genuine transformation is underway. And almost nobody talks about it. Almost nobody maps it out for you ahead of time. So when it happens, and it will happen, and maybe it's happening right now, most people interpret it as a sign that something has gone terribly wrong. But when actually, and I mean this with everything in me, it is one of the most reliable signs that something is going very, very right. Today, we are talking about the turbulence phase. Let's get started. Let's start by giving this thing a name and framework, because I believe that naming an experience is one of the most powerful things that we can do. When we have a name for what we were going through, it stops being terrifying and it starts getting much easier to navigate through, right? The turbulence phase is a period of disruption, discomfort, and apparent chaos that occurs right before a significant shift. Whether that shift is your inner world, your business, your finances, relationships, or your outer life. It is the threshold experience, the space between what was and what is becoming. And here's the most important thing that I want you to hear right from the start. It is not random. It is not a punishment. It is not a sign that you have done something wrong. It's completely natural and predictable. And it's a very necessary part of transformation. The science backs this up beautifully. So there was a physicist and a chemist, and his research was one that he called dissipative structures. What he discovered was that systems under pressure, systems being pushed toward change, they don't just break down. They have the capacity to spontaneously reorganize into a higher level of order and complexity, but they must go through a period of turbulence and chaos first. The turbulence is not the failure of the transformation. It's the mechanism of it. Complexity science adds another layer with the concept of the edge of chaos, that uncomfortable zone between perfect order and complete disorder, where all real innovation, elevation, and transformation happen, not in the comfortable middle at the edge, in the messy, uncertain, and disorienting in between. And then there's the caterpillar. We talk about the metamorphosis so casually, like it's this gentle, graceful little process, right? But what actually happens inside that cocoon is anything but gentle. The caterpillar doesn't gradually grow wings. It completely dissolves. Its body breaks down into this formless liquid state of pure potential. And if you could look inside this cocoon mid-process, you would see nothing that resembles a butterfly. nothing that even resembles a caterpillar. You would say chaos, disillusion, what looks from the outside like destruction. And yet, then there's the butterfly. This is the turbulence phase, and it shows up everywhere that real transformation is happening. In your healing, in your business, in your money, in your relationships, in your creative work, in your life, everywhere. So let's start with the inner world, the emotional and the healing journey, because this is where the turbulence phase is perhaps most misunderstood and most painful. You've been doing the work, maybe therapy, maybe coaching, maybe energy healing, maybe all three. And for a while, things were moving. You could feel it. And then, out of nowhere, it feels like you've gone backwards. Old emotions are back. Grief that you thought you'd processed. Anger that you thought you'd released. Shame that you were sure you'd healed. And the voice starts. Maybe I'm not healable. Maybe I've been wasting my time and my money. Maybe this is just who I am. Here's what I want to tell you. When old emotions resurface during deep healing work, they are not coming back because you haven't healed. They are coming back because you are finally safe enough and strong enough to release the deepest layers. The first rounds of healing clear the surface. The turbulence phase is when the roots start to come up. Think of pulling a weed. The first time you pull it, you get the top. It grows back. The second time, you pull deeper. Eventually, you get to the root. And pulling the root is harder than pulling the top. It requires more effort, more disruption to the soul, more mess. But it's the root that matters. It's the root that, once cleared, means the weed doesn't grow back. The turbulence in your inner world can also look like an identity crisis, that disorienting feeling of not quite knowing who you are anymore. The old story doesn't fit. The old coping mechanisms, they don't work the way they used to. The old version of you is dissolving and the new one hasn't fully formed yet. You're in the in-between. I lived in this place for a significant season of my life. I was committed to healing, and I was showing up for the work. And things kept surfacing physically, emotionally, in my relationships, and my sense of self. And I remember thinking, I was more functional when I was numb. At least then I could get through the day without falling apart, right? What I know now is that the numbness was the problem. The feeling, as overwhelming as it was the healing. My system was finally processing what it had been storing for years. The turbulence was the release. And on the other side of it was a version of myself I genuinely could not have imagined from the inside of the cocoon. If you are in this place right now, please hear me. You're not going backwards. You are going deeper. And deeper is where the real freedom lives. Now let's talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough during the healing and the wellness space. The turbulence phase in business. Because it is just as real and just as predictable and just as misunderstood as the inner work version. And for a lot of people, it hits even harder. Because when your business is in turbulence, it's not just emotional, it's financial, it's practical, it's your livelihood. Here's what the turbulence phase looks like in business. You've been building something. You believe in it. You invested time, money, energy, pieces of yourself. And then you hit a wall. The clients aren't coming in the way that you expected. The launch didn't perform the way you hoped. The thing that was working suddenly stops working. You rebrand, you pivot, you try something new. And for a stretch, it feels like nothing is landing. You look at your numbers, and they're not moving. You look at your peers, and it seems like everyone else has figured something out that you're missing. And then the voice starts. Maybe this isn't viable. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I should just go back to what's safe. I want to offer you a different lens. The messy middle of building a business is one of the most classic turbulence phases there is. Almost every entrepreneur who has built something real has a story about the season right before things clicked. The season that almost broke them. The coach who had 0 clients for 6 months and then built a full practice in 3. The product business that couldn't get traction, and then one piece of content went everywhere. The service provider who was about to quit, and then their most aligned client found them out of nowhere. These aren't flukes. These are the turbulence phases completing, the system reorganizing at a higher level. And here's what's actually happening energetically. When your business is in turbulence, you are in the process of becoming the version of yourself who can hold the next level of your business. And that version of you is not who you are yet. The growth that you're reaching for requires you to expand in confidence and clarity and capacity in the way that you think about yourself and what you offer. And that expansion has a turbulence phase. It also often requires the clearing of what I call the invisible ceiling. These subconscious beliefs and energetic patterns that are operating underneath the strategy. The story that says you don't deserve to be paid well. The fear that visibility means danger. The inherited belief that money is hard to come by, or that success means loss of integrity. These things don't show up on your business plan, but they show up in your results. So I've worked with clients who have done everything right strategically. The website, the offers, the content, the networking, and still couldn't seem to break through a certain income level. And then we went into energy work. We would find layers of trapped emotions and subconscious beliefs that were quietly contradicting everything the strategy was trying to build. And once those cleared, once the inner work caught up with the outer strategy, things started to move. So turbulence in your business is often the outer reflection of an inner expansion that hasn't completed yet. The business can only grow as far as the person running it has grown. And the growth has a turbulence phase. So if you're in the messy middle of building something right now, if you are questioning everything and wondering if this is worth it, I want you to consider that you may be closer than you think, that what feels like stalling may actually be pressure building, that the reorganization is happening even when you can't see it yet. Don't quit at the edge of the breakthrough. And let's talk about money, because the turbulence phase shows up here in some very specific and very destabilizing ways. And I think it's important to name them. When you are in the process of breaking a generational money pattern, when you are genuinely trying to shift your relationship with money, expand your income, build your wealth in a way that your family line hasn't, you will almost certainly encounter turbulence. It might look like unexpected expenses that seem to arrive right when you've built up some savings. How many of us have been there? Or an income dip right when you were starting to gain momentum. Or a financial setback that feels like the universe is actively working against you. Or old money fears getting louder, scarcity thinking, panic around bills, the familiar pull of old patterns that feel safer than the new ones. Here's what I want you to understand about money turbulence specifically. Money is deeply tied to identity. Money is energy. Your relationship with money is woven into your nervous system, your subconscious beliefs, your sense of worthiness, your family story, your cultural story. When you try to change that relationship, you try to move into a new financial reality. You are not just changing numbers, you are changing your identity, and identity change has a turbulence phase. The unexpected expenses that arrive when you're building your savings, sometimes that is the subconscious finding a way to return to the familiar, to the known level, because abundance, real sustained abundance, can feel deeply unsafe to a nervous system that was wired in scarcity. The system tries to self-correct back to what it knows. And this is not a character flaw. This is not proof that you're bad with money or destined to struggle. It is a pattern response that can be understood, worked with, and changed. The income dip right before the leap is also extraordinarily common. I have seen it happen with my clients again and again, and I have lived it myself. There is something about the energetic pressure of reaching for a new level that can create a temporary contradiction before the expansion, like pulling back a bowstring before the arrow flies. When you're in money turbulence, when the finances feel chaotic and scary and like you are losing ground, the most important thing that you can do is not make fear-based decisions. Do not abandon the vision because the numbers are temporarily uncomfortable. Do not retreat to the old ceiling just because the new level feels unstable right now. Get support. Look honestly at what's practical and what needs attention, and simultaneously do the inner work, because the outer financial reality will only stabilize when the inner relationship with money stabilizes. Both matter. Both are very real, and both can shift. The turbulence phase also shows up in relationships and in the outer circumstances of your life. And this can be one of the most disorienting versions because it involves other people and things that feel outside of your control. When you are genuinely shifting your frequency, expanding your sense of self, healing patterns that have been running for years, the relationships in your life are affected. Not because you were doing something wrong, but because relationships are systems. And when one part of the system changes, the whole system has to recalibrate. Some relationships will grow with you. Some will deepen in beautiful ways that you didn't expect. And some that have been comfortable, some that even have felt safe, will start to feel misaligned. The dynamic that used to work no longer fits. The things that you used to be able to tolerate, you can't. The version of you that maintained that relationship is changing, and that creates turbulence. And this might look like increased conflict with someone you love, or a friendship that quietly fades, or a relationship coming to a head in ways that feel very sudden, even though looking back, the pressure has been building for a long time. And in the outer life, more broadly, living situations change. Jobs shift. Opportunities that seem solid fall through. The structures that held the old version of your life start to feel unstable. And listen, I want to be very careful here because I don't want to romanticize genuine hardship. Real loss is real loss, and painful endings are painful. I'm not asking you to pretend that nothing hard is happening or that everything that falls apart was meant to fall apart. What I am saying is this: when multiple things in your outer life seem to be shifting or destabilizing at the same time that you are doing significant inner work or reaching a new level, consider that this might not be a coincidence. Consider that your outer world may be reorganizing to match your inner shift. That some of what is ending needed to end. That some of what feels like loss is actually making space. The outer life is always, eventually, a reflection of the inner life. When the inner life is in turbulence, the outer life often follows. And when the inner life settles into new order, the outer will too. So if the turbulence phase is natural and universal and a sign that transformation is actually working, then why do so many of us quit right when we're in the middle of it? I've thought a lot about this, and I think it comes down to four things. First, we run from discomfort. We live in a culture that treats discomfort as a problem to be solved rather than a process to be moved through, right? If something feels hard, we assume that we're doing it wrong. So when the turbulence comes in our healing, in our business, in our money or relationships, we interpret difficulty as failure, when actually the difficulty is often the most reliable indicator that something real is happening. Number 2, we don't have a map. Nobody warns us. Nobody says, hey, before your business breaks through, there will probably be a season where nothing seems to work. Before your finances shift, there may be unexpected turbulence. Before your deepest healing completes, the old wounds might resurface one more time. Without a map, we fill the blank with our worst fear. And our worst fear usually sounds like, I was right not to trust this. Number 3, the proximity problem. We quit right at the threshold because we can't see how close we are. The resistance is highest right before the breakthrough because the old structure is making its final stand. The old patterns, the old frequency, the old identity, they don't go quietly. They push back. And if you don't know that, you mistake the pushback for proof that change isn't coming. And number 4, the transformation is terrifying. Even when we want to change, even when the current reality is painful, the new is unfamiliar, and the nervous system will almost always choose a familiar pain over an unfamiliar freedom until it learns that the unfamiliar is safe. Becoming something new means the old version has to die. And even when that old version was suffering, it was known. It was familiar. And letting it go is a real grief. And grief, if we don't understand it, can look like a reason to stop. And look, I can't talk about the turbulence phase without honoring the spiritual dimension, because every wisdom tradition that I have studied has a version of this experience, a name for what you have to go through the turbulence. So in mysticism, the tradition is called the dark night of the soul, and many of us have heard this. It's the stripping away of certainty and comfort right before a profound spiritual opening. The shamanic traditions is called dismemberment, the symbolic death of the old self before being reassembled in a new form. In astrology, it's the Pluto transit, the slow, complete dismantling of whatever no longer serves the soul's path. All of these traditions are pointing to the same truth. The descent is the part of the journey. You can't skip it. You cannot bypass it, and you are not abandoned in it. What if the turbulence phase in your healing, in your business, in your money, in your life is not something happening to you, but something happening for you? What if the very intensity of it is evidence of how much is being reorganized? What if the universe, your higher self, the divine, whatever language is true for you, is the most present with you, not in the easy seasons, but in the turbulent ones? The potter is most engaged with the clay in the moment of shaping. The turbulence is not the absence of divine support. It may be the most concentrated expression of it. So whenever your turbulence is showing up, here's what I know helps. First, name it. Say it out loud. I am in a turbulence phase. This is not evidence that I'm failing. This is evidence that I am transforming. The story you tell about what's happening determines everything about how you move through it. Number 2, don't make irreversible decisions from inside the turbulence. Give yourself a window. The turbulence phase is not the clearest vantage point from which to quit the business, end a relationship, or abandon the vision. Let the wave pass before you decide. Number 3, increase your support. Don't withdraw from it. When things get hard, the instinct is to isolate, to cancel the sessions, to stop the practices. Do the opposite. Stay held. Let the people and practices that know you well hold you while you're in the river. Number 3, Let your body be your anchor. When everything feels unstable, come back to your physical body, feet on the floor, slow breath, hands on your heart. The body is always in the present moment, even when the mind is not. Use that. And then surrender the timeline. There is a kind of fighting against the turbulence that makes it worse. Surrender is not giving up. It is just trusting the process enough to stop strangling it. And then track your growth, not just your symptoms. The turbulence phase is happening in the context of growth, not instead of it. Look for what's also true. The clarity that came through the pain. The old pattern that you stopped reaching for. The truth you finally had the courage to speak. Here's a practice you can return to anytime that you're in the turbulence and need something to hold on to. Find a quiet space and a quiet moment. Sit comfortably, close your eyes. Take 3 slow, deep breaths, long exhales. Place your hand on your heart and on your belly. Feel the warmth and feel the breath and say these words. I am in the process of transformation. What feels like chaos is actually reorganization. I do not need to understand it to move through it. I am held. I am safe. I am becoming. Breathe into these words. Let them land in your body, and then take one final breath and release any need to control the timeline. Just for right now, just for this moment, and come back to this as often as you need to. So let's bring it all home. Today we talked about the turbulence phase, the disruption and apparent chaos that shows up right before a significant shift in your healing, in your business, in your money, your relationships, and in your outer life. Everywhere that real transformation is underway. We looked at the science and the edge of chaos, the caterpillar. We looked at why we quit right at the threshold, running from discomfort, the lack of a map, the proximity problem, and the very real grief of becoming someone new. We honored the spiritual dimension of this experience, the dark night, the dismemberment, the truth that every wisdom tradition has ever tried to map. And we talked about how to navigate it, with naming it, with support, with surrender, with the body as the anchor, with trust. And here is what I most want you to carry with you. The turbulence is not the enemy of your transformation. It is the transformation in process. The breakthrough does not happen without the messy middle. The new level in your healing, in your business, in your finances, in your life does not come without the turbulence phase that precedes it. You are not failing. You are not broken, and you are not behind. You may be 3 feet from the water. You may be weeks from the emergence. Stay in it. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might be in the turbulence phase right now, in their healing and in their business and their life. Sometimes the most powerful thing that we can offer someone is a framework that helps them stop being afraid of their own transformation. And if you're ready to go deeper, if you want support in clearing energetic and subconscious layers that may be extending your turbulence phase, I invite you to book a discovery session with me. This work gets to the root of what's underneath the turbulence, the trapped emotions, the subconscious patterns, and the energetic blocks. And it begins to clear the path for the shift that you've been working toward. The link will be in the description, and I would be honored to walk alongside you. So until next time, trust the process, trust yourself, and know that on the other side of what you're moving through, something extraordinary is waiting. See you next time.